I just got CPA certified? No, I got my Red Cross, that's not CPA, whatever. Anyway, CPR, that's what I got, my CPR certification today. Not today, anyway, CPR certification this week, let's just say. And first aid and CPR, got those done at the Red Cross. And I don't know why I'm smiling so happily at this memory. I guess just thinking of childhood, I guess. But in the course of, we were talking about, why people might have, we were talking about a lot of things for first aid. And one of the topics that came up was seizures. And the Scott, our CPR Red Cross teacher, asked if any of us had experience with seizures. And that reminded me of Herbie from the old neighborhood. Herbie, when I was a kid, he was one of the kids in the neighborhood. When we were, oh my goodness, I can't even remember the age. We must have been, again, everything happens from 8 to 12 that I remember all this stuff. I remember we were in the backyard. My father was in the backyard for some reason. This is where we hung the clothes to dry. And there was another carport next to the backyard. And there was another carport which we used as sort of a hanging out area, among other things. And they fixed motorcycles there and stuff, my brothers did. And my father was there at the carport area, and we were in the backyard, and we were jumping the fence on the east side of the backyard because one of our friends lived in this apartment complex, and we would commonly jump the fence there. And we're jumping the fence. 3 of us had gone over, a big group of kids. 3 of us had gone over, and Herbie had climbed up 5-foot fence. And Herbie had climbed up on the fence. I remember him climbing on the fence, and he'd been up there, and he was in this sort of pose, he like Batman crawling up, and he was holding on, and then he let go with one hand, and he spun out, and it was like Quasimodo or something from the movies, and he hung on the fence, and he looked back at all of us, and he just kind of hung there, and we thought he was being funny, and wondered what he was doing, and he was just staring at us. And then he started to convulse. And he started to convulse because, well, we didn't know this, but right at that moment, one of our, I forgot who it was, had shouted out, "Oh my God, Herbie has epilepsy." And my father came running over and disconnected his hand from the fence and put him on the ground. And this was the thinking back in the day. You don't do this anymore. Back in the day, he would took something and put it in his mouth. So I guess he wouldn't bite his tongue off, they felt, or swallow their tongue or something. And this was the real thinking back then. My father thought fast and stuck his wallet in there, and he was biting down on it and frothing and we were just holding him down and didn't know what to do. And I don't think any of us called 911. And he eventually kind of just came out of it. He calmed down. He was exhausted because his body had been all shaking around, and it was like he had woken up. My father asked him, "Are you all right?" "Yeah, I'm all right." And my father scooped up Herbie in his arms and took him home, I guess. Everyone followed, but this was happening at my house in my backyard, and everyone left, so I didn't think to follow. I don't know, because it just kind of shook me up. I wasn't expecting it. It was out of the blue. One minute we're all jumping over the fence, we're going to go do something, and this happened, and my father got involved, and he picked the guy up and walked away with him. And nothing came of it. Herbie was fine. And he took him home, and I learned about epilepsy that day. That's when I learned what epilepsy was. And the follow-up with Herbie was, I moved out of the old neighborhood, we moved out before I was 18. The family moved. And then I never moved back there. But I went back and visited when I got to college, 23 years old or so. We left the area when I was 16-ish. 23 years old or so, I ended up going back because I ran into some old people. I said, "Oh, there's still some people living in the neighborhood." I go back to the old neighborhood 23 years old, all those years later, and one of the first people I see is Herbie. And there he is, standing in the front yard of David's old front yard. They're still taking up the same spaces, standing in the front, drinking beer, just like they had last been when I was, back in the day. And there they were still, and there was Herbie still. He was like a homeless person. He was all dirty and streaking full of dirt, but it wasn't like he was not there mentally, cognitively. But he had had a hard life, and I guess because of the epilepsy or something, he had, I don't know if he ever finished his education and things, but it was relayed to me that he just got a lot of, there were still factories back then. Back in El Monte, a lot of factories, South El Monte, a lot of factories. So he used to get a lot of factory work, but he moved from place to place because of the seizures, and they wouldn't keep him. And so here I was, 23. He must have been maybe a year or two older, and he looked very, very like he'd had a super hard life the years I hadn't seen him, and that was probably one of the last times I saw him. Was coming back at this time for this short period, and he wasn't around all the time. I guess it was a strange thing that he was back in the neighborhood, and there I was. Saw Herbie, like I said, just talked to him. Seemed all right, seemed the same guy, you know, except for this harshness that he wore on himself, that I'd assume that the epilepsy had imposed upon him. So anyway, got my CPR first aid certification this week, and that sparked me remembering Herbie.